So welcome everyone. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Don Handrick. I'm happy to be back here at Ocean of Compassion. And tonight's topic, we're going to be looking at gratitude, gratefulness, how we practice this, how we work with this idea in our lives. And just so you know, this is also going to be a topic this weekend. I've been invited to do a course on what are called the 8 Pillars of Joy. Some of you have probably heard of these if you've read the wonderful book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu called The Book of Joy. So anyway, we're going to be exploring those in a kind of, trying to figure out how to get those more into our lives, those various practices that are really important. So gratitude is one of those 8 pillars. So we'll be exploring this as well this weekend, so you get an extra chance if you are coming back for the weekend teachings. So let's start tonight with an opportunity just to focus our minds a bit, to let go of some of the distractions we might have, preoccupations. So I'm sure most of you in the room have some form of a meditation practice, so you're probably familiar with techniques of meditating on the breath. If not, then I just encourage you first to check your posture to make sure that the back is straight, but not kind of overly straightened. We don't put an effort into, making our body kind of stand up erect, but rather just allow yourself to be in a natural position where the back is upright without having to use any tension to hold it in that posture, or at least as little tension as possible. And then relax into this posture. Make sure that you aren't holding tension in the lower back, the lower abdomen, releasing any tension in the neck and shoulder area. Just allowing yourself to be here in this space, in this relaxed mode, but yet again with the body upright, the back straight. So these qualities that we've just done physically, we want to do with our minds as well. Make sure that our minds are quite alert and attentive, but not tight. So we have a relaxed feeling to our minds as well. And we're going to do just a few minutes of focused meditation on the breath. Give ourselves that opportunity to let go of some of these distractions, preoccupations. And then on the basis of that, I'll lead you in a short reflection to begin exploring this topic of gratitude and also to set a good intention for being here. So if you have a technique that you use to focus on the breath, you can do that. If not, I usually suggest to people to use the sensation that occurs just inside the tip of the nose as you breathe in and out through the nostrils. Making that your meditation object, just try to stay present with that. And whenever the mind wanders from the breath, gently bring the mind back to the breath. So I'll ring the bowl to begin the meditation, and then again I'll lead you in a short guided meditation after a few minutes of silent focusing on the breath. So what I'd like to invite you to do now is to begin to explore gratitude, first by thinking of the ways in which gratitude flows freely in your own heart, the ways that thoughts of gratitude arise quite naturally, or even words that come from that place of gratitude, or perhaps even actions we do on the basis of our gratefulness for others in our life. So just acknowledge within your own experience the ways in which you already have a practice of gratitude. You can even feel some joy in your heart by thinking about those. And then I'd like to invite you to look at the other side. Where are the places where you feel that you're not as grateful as perhaps it would be nice to be? Perhaps you're blocked in your gratitude towards particular events or people. And just to acknowledge those. We're not, beating ourselves up for not having more extensive gratefulness for all the things in our life. But just to acknowledge that perhaps there are some opportunities that we can explore tonight to enlarge upon this idea of gratitude, to develop this attitude of being grateful for everything we meet. So where are you blocked? Where are the places where you get stuck in having that thought of gratitude, or the actions that come from that? And then finally, to channel these thoughts into having a good motivation for being here. First of all, to think how wonderful it would be if the time we have here together tonight can contribute in some way to enlarging this attitude of gratitude in your own heart. Perhaps even to the degree where you can have that extensive gratitude for everything that we meet, in every moment. But then moreover, to hold the additional thought of how wonderful it would be if what we do here tonight can become the cause for others to have their hearts open through our own gratitude for them, but also that they can experience that gratitude, that we can meet them and connect with them from that place of gratitude. And just hold that thought of how amazing, how wonderful it would be if what we do here tonight can become the cause of that very far-reaching result. All beings with open hearts to each other and to everything that they meet that occurs in their lives. So, there'll be an opportunity to share some of what you meditated on if you'd like to, but that'll be a little bit later. I want to do a little bit of an introduction to this talk. I realized when I was living over in Italy, there was a woman from Spain, and I'd never really spent a lot of time outside of the country other than when I was quite young, but there was a woman from Spain, and of course in Spanish, when you say thank you, the response is, de nada. It's nothing, kind of people just sort of not really taking it that seriously in a sense. Nonetheless, I mean, people will still say thank you. It's not like they've X'd that out of their lives. But then she made a comment one time. She said, you Americans, you're always saying thank you for everything. She says, stop it already. So, it kind of brings to mind this idea of, well, what is it like to really live in a space of gratitude, to have this attitude of gratitude? I don't know that it means saying thank you to everyone we meet for everything that we get, for like where we're just constantly saying that. And I think in our culture we get to a place where we say that, but do we really mean it? Is there a kind of a thought and a heart behind it? Or are we simply going along with conventional niceties and good manners, and so we say all these things? We were taught to say thank you and please and all these things when we were kids, and we just kind of carry them over into our adult life. So I think it is important to really understand what the mind is that's underneath all of that, that if we are saying thank you and acknowledging others in our lives, that it's coming from a space of real gratitude. So we have to understand all the different ways that we can be grateful. Another thing that influenced me giving this talk, the first time I gave this was over 10 years ago. I've resurrected a lot of these talks now that I'm out on the road for half the year. I kind of brought them back from the past and updated them to some degree. But the first time I did this talk, I remembered a Twilight Zone episode that I saw that was, I don't know, I thought it was about gratitude. But I don't know, I'm not so sure anymore. I went back and watched it again. But nonetheless, I think you can make a point for gratitude being involved. This one starred Burgess Meredith. Many of you remember Burgess Meredith. And the story was that he was this, a bit of a bookworm, and he was living in this village or town, whatever, and he had these very thick glasses, and he loved to spend his time reading. And so this was like what gave him great joy. And his wife was really annoyed with the fact that he was never really paying enough attention to her and what was going on. And then at work, they wanted him to make sure, it was in a bank, they wanted to make sure that he was up there doing his job, and he always wanted to read. He was just like totally obsessed with reading. And the story goes that essentially one afternoon, he's down at his lunch hour, he's down in the vault of the bank. He finds it's the only place now where he can go and sort of be isolated and separate and away from all the people who are kind of bugging him, who are bothering him, and do his reading. And an atomic bomb goes off, and everything's kind of destroyed, and of course all the people are gone. And he immediately, when he first comes up, he's a bit distressed at this. Oh my gosh, look at what's happened. And then he sees like this huge pile of books in the library, and he goes, oh, this is perfect. Now I can read all I want. And of course, what happens? The first thing that happens after he feels this great joy at having this opportunity is his glasses break. And of course, there's no one there to fix glasses. There's no one there to make it all okay. And so this amazing opportunity that he finally gets, it's totally thwarted. So I saw it as a message about gratitude, because the idea that I saw was, and I don't know, again, I could make this case, the idea I saw was that he was definitely not acknowledging what he had in his life in terms of the people who were there supporting him, his employer, his wife, the other people that he interacted with. And he was making a very selfish choice. He was choosing to be really focused on what he needed in the midst of others needing other things from him, needing him to be at work, needing him to be at home and pay attention to them in their own ways. So I saw it as a real shortage of gratitude. And of course, the crux of it, the thing that gets you at the end, is that he needed those people. He needs other people. And of course, this is one of the reasons why gratitude is so powerful, is because we aren't some independent, self-sufficient thing living on our own, completely capable of taking care of all of our needs. We need others in our lives. And gratitude is our way of connecting with that, being in touch with that, making sure that we honor that. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting little Twilight Zone that spoke to me in that way. So we can see that definitely gratitude and lack of gratitude are related to the ability that we have to be genuinely connecting with others or to be disconnected from others and more focused on ourselves. And of course, in this Mahayana tradition that we practice here, we know that this is at the heart of all of our spiritual path, is a degree to which we can open our hearts to the welfare of others and to be kind of acknowledging the role that they play in our lives, to understand that, and then on the basis of that, to cherish them, to take care of them, to make them, the main object of our actions. So before I get into some of the other intricacies of gratitude and how we practice it in relation to different beings, I'm just curious where people, if you want to share, you don't have to share, but where people find it easy to be grateful, where it just kind of flows quite naturally. And then moreover, where I want to spend most of our time tonight is where it gets stuck, because those are the things that are keeping us from having that real full attitude that is about being grateful for whatever we meet, whoever we meet, whoever we see on TV, whoever we hear the tweets of, whoever, So, anyone want to share anything? Where did you find it to flow freely? Yeah, Elaine.
I think what was interesting is because I looked at both of them together in the end. So flowing freely is, if I compare, it's when I'm being given something that I want. And when I'm being given something that I don't want, it doesn't flow as freely.
Yeah.
So it was, I could see that.
Right. Good. So you're hitting the nail right on the head there with that particular observation, because where we tend to, in my own experience, I'm not going to put words into everybody else's mouth, is that we don't have much gratitude when we're not getting what we want. But of course, you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need, right? So there's something there still that we can be grateful for, but it's not what we want, Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? I mean, it doesn't have to be the answer that everybody else gives. I'm just curious. Yes, remind me of your name. I met you last time, I think.
My name's Bob.
Bob, yeah, good to see you, Bob.
So, I was thinking that there's this glass half empty, half full dichotomy.
Sure.
So, for example, on the issue of health, I'm probably healthier than most people my age, but I'm not as healthy as I used to be.
Right.
So, you can look at it either way. When something goes wrong that wasn't going wrong before, I tend not to be very grateful about it, even though I may still be healthier than my peers.
Yeah. I think, and there is that tendency, as I'm hearing you, Bob, that when you get to a place where something gets in the way of that continued happiness, the gratitude stops, but there's not an acknowledgement of everything that preceded that, of the way that things were flowing before. So that's definitely an issue that is a block frequently to our gratitude. Thank you for sharing that. That was good. Anyone else? Yes. What's your name?
Rosemary.
Hi, Rosemary.
Hi. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the center in Taos, your center.
Oh, wonderful.
And Geshe Cherub was teaching about patience.
Good.
And we got on sort of the idea of the people who are so important in teaching you patience, because if you only surround yourself with easy people, then you don't really have a chance to practice patience. And we talked about some particular political people. And so I can kind of get to the place where I understand that that person is a way for me to practice patience. But I have a really hard time feeling gratitude. It's like I can go so far because I can see sort of it's helping me with my practice, but to put something out there for the other person who drives me crazy, then that part was harder.
Yeah, I think it gets into some tougher dynamics. We'll go into this a bit tonight, kind of because, the patience thing is one thing. To have gratitude on the basis of all that does feel like we're taking a little bit of a leap, because it's like we're almost acknowledging this negative thing that they're doing in a positive light, and it becomes a little different. but we can still do it. I hold that premise that, that's kind of the thesis for tonight, that we can get to that place where we can experience gratitude for anything or anyone, regardless. But we'll talk about that a bit more. That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Rosemary. Yeah, Fabienne?
In the meditation, there's actually this podcast that I listened to not that long ago that actually popped up in my mind. That's not related to me, but it just seemed like a stark example of gratitude. It was Dan Harris, who does the 10% Happier podcast, was interviewing Thupten Jinpa. And they were at some conference hall, so they weren't in a studio. And so Dan introduces himself and then introduces Thupten Jinpa. And Thupten Jinpa comes on, and the first thing he says was he thanked very wholeheartedly Dan for inviting him. And then he thanked the host and the people who had organized. And Dan's reaction to that, and it was all very natural, just so spontaneous. And Dan's response to that was something along the line was, wow, okay, well, I didn't even think of thanking anyone, because he was the one who had opened the talk. And it just kind of like hinted of, this is the example of someone whose mind is so soaked in gratitude that it just spontaneously comes this expression of thanks.
Oh, that's very nice to see. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. I think that's kind of what it looks like at some level. Again, and it has to be genuine. I think, as I was saying earlier, that a lot of our gratitude that we express is a bit because we want people to like us and be very polite and all of that, and so we say things, but we don't necessarily have the heart that goes with it. So when you see it like that and it feels very genuine, and you see them as steeped in gratitude, that's nice. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything that came up in the meditation looking at this? Yes.
I've noticed...
And it's Marge, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Marge.
Very good memory. Thank you.
Oh, I don't have that good a memory.
So I've noticed in the last several years that it's kind of come up a little more spontaneous for me because I feel so fortunate that I have such wonderful friends, and I'm really grateful for that. And maybe it's simple stuff, but I feel very fortunate to live where I live and to have a nice place to live and for all the things that I have and to be able to find somehow the Dharma when I did. Sure. So it's been more spontaneous for me the last few years. I don't know, it just sort of happens.
Yeah, good. And I think, again, to start with those things that are meeting our needs is a good place to be at, because then we get it really quite genuinely. I think there's nothing wrong with that being the entryway into gratitude. And it does become more complex, as Rosemary said, when we start trying to extend gratitude to that level, being grateful for he who shall not be named, and all the things that he's doing, Lord Voldemort, Oh, I said his name. No. Okay. Anyone else? Anything to share on that? These are great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Yeah, Judy.
I find that sometimes when stuff starts to go wrong, then I realize, wow, I need to practice being grateful for all the stuff that I take for granted.
Sure.
So it's almost like a wake-up call.
Yeah. Good. That's an important lesson to remember those times. Yeah. Great.
I think I take a lot of stuff for granted when things are going smooth.
Yeah, I think we all do. This is the story of our lives. Venerable Rabina, one of my favorite teachers, she often points out that, while people often ask, why do bad things happen to me? They rarely ask, why do good things happen to me? Because this is our default expectation. we kind of wake up every day and think that it's going to continue in that way. And this is a sense of taking it for granted. We don't really have that gratitude that goes, oh my gosh, I just woke up. I'm in a comfortable, safe space with all these wonderful things at my disposal. And we don't start our day with even those thoughts. We kind of just expect it's all there. It doesn't lead to, again, a lot more, as we're going to explore even this weekend, it doesn't lead to even the opportunity for more joy in our lives on the basis of that gratitude. Because it does contribute to a greater sense of well-being and joyful heart and everything. So, great. Last call. Yes, David.
About a year ago, I was in a pretty bad car accident, and I got rear-ended on the 280. I was driving home from work, and suddenly I had all these injuries. I had back injuries, I had neck injuries, I had a head injury. I had to go out of work for 3 months to rehab.
Wow.
And at first it was like, this really sucks, this is not fun. But after a little while, I became incredibly grateful that it actually happened. And it gave me an opportunity to practice, to really delve into practice, to really turn my mind towards some things that I hadn't been able to really get pushed to think about. It was just an incredible wake-up call for Dharma, for practice. I don't think my practice would ever have gotten to, I mean, it's not like I have a great practice. I'm not saying that. I don't think I would be nearly as kind of good enough with my practice, kind of okay, decent in my practice, as I am now as a result of this car accident that gave me some really bad injuries. And I think that it was a great lesson that I was able to. I think Lama Zopa helped me a lot with thinking about this kind of issue, and really, transforming problems onto the path. And anyway, I just thought I would mention it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, David. Yeah, I'm sorry you had the painful part of it, but I'm so glad you took advantage of the challenge that afforded, that to really look at your practice, and that's where the rubber meets the road when we're dealing with all these things that are not what we wanted or expected, so thank you for sharing that. That's great. So I think that, again, when we talk about this idea of gratitude, we do see that there is this ease that we have with gratitude in general, and I think this is pretty common that we were hearing with things that we find favorable and pleasing and seem to meet our needs. And sometimes we don't even express that to the degree that we would like to, or ideally, should be doing, simply because, once more, that attitude of gratitude at that level is an important part of sustaining kind of our joy and connection to others and so on. But nonetheless, those people who are difficult, or situations that are difficult, are very valuable in our lives. And this is a bit of what we're going to explore tonight. I think we all know, this idea that we do tend to divide, I'm going to talk mostly about people initially, or beings in this world, that we divide them into 3 different categories quite naturally. I sometimes use the analogy of us being on a stage, so we each have our stage, right? Because the show's about each of us. Your shows are about you, my show's about me. We each are on our little stage. And if you've ever done theater or anything, you know that when you're on the stage, there's the stage lights that come down, and of course the front row is very visible. You can see all the smiling faces there. That's where our friends are. That's where all the people are that we put in that category, because they applaud and they cheer and they give us nice encouragement. They're very easy, again, to feel grateful for those folks. And then you have kind of the dark of the theater, which I consider to be all the strangers, because it's the bulk of the theater. You can't really see all their faces. They're behind the scenes, but they're a part of your show. This is an important thing to remember. They're not divorced from your show. They are supporting you in ways that you're not quite aware of all the time, but they're in your theater. They're definitely kind of part of what makes the Don show, the Casey show. Everyone having our own little time. But then we have the people like coming in through the doors and like making loud noises and throwing tomatoes and doing all the stuff that we really don't want, because we're trying to have a good show. We're trying to do what we like to do, and we like to get the applause. We don't like to get the jeers and the nasty comments and all this other stuff. So it's the same with any type of experience, that we tend to feel a lot of gratitude, a lot of our opening of our hearts, compassion, love, and so on, when things are in accord with that, when we're getting that wonderful feeling from people, from events, whatever. And when things aren't going our way, it's very hard to be grateful. It's very hard to have your heart open. And of course, the strangers is a whole nother category, those people who are just sort of behind the scenes that we frequently don't have gratitude for. So maybe we can start there and we'll work our way towards. We've already touched a bit on gratitude for friends, and I think this is an important thing to make sure that we are aware of, is that while it's wonderful to have many people in our lives who do directly support us, who are in our lives for that reason, because they care about us, they have a connection with us, it's important that we acknowledge that and do what we can to express gratitude for that, make it as reciprocal as possible, simply because this is an important connection, a karmic connection that we have with those individuals that is important to sustain. But with all the people who are in the stranger category, this is the stuff that we don't think of that often. And of course, we're encouraged to frequently in Buddhist teachings, not just around equanimity, where this idea of these three groups is frequently taught, but in regard to any of the positive emotions, loving kindness, compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, what have you. All of these can be extended to populations that we don't normally find it easy to be doing that for. So with the strangers, maybe we don't know every way that these beings, and chances are we don't, the ways that those beings are contributing to your welfare, but we know that we've benefited from others who are strangers, right? The clothes that you're wearing right now, you didn't grow the cotton that they were produced from and then dye it and design it and sew it, and now you're wearing it, or the plastic buttons or whatever. You didn't do all of that yourself, right? And you say, well, yeah, but I paid for it through my hard-earned money. Well, sure, but there are many individuals that are behind that process to produce a shirt or a pair of pants or, whatever. We know that there's scores of beings behind that. Everything that we have in our lives is produced through other people's efforts, other people's kindness. And we can't say, that any particular being that we have a stranger relationship with, who's in that dark of our theater that's just kind of behind the scenes, we can't say that they aren't involved in our welfare in that way. Chances are we don't know what way that they are involved, but they might even be involved in another degree of separation, perhaps, where it's like they're not the person who was sewing the shirt, but they're the person who helped support the person who's sewing the shirt, or was, feeding the person who is sewing the shirt, and so on. So we see that there's this huge web of interconnectedness that we're frequently blind to. And to have the awareness of interdependence and the reality that we do depend upon others is one of the sort of wisdom components that we can bring into our minds that helps to awaken that spirit of gratitude. Because if we apply these teachings in terms of understanding that all of this stuff that we have in our lives doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from other people's kindness. We frequently use that word kindness. I point out, though, that it doesn't mean that the person who sewed this shirt for me, said, oh, I can't wait till Don's wearing this and how much Don will enjoy it or whatever. No, we don't have that kind of personal connection with them. They're not being intentionally kind, but they are doing something that we benefit from. Therefore, it's a kindness. It's a different way of defining kindness, obviously. In our culture, we think kindness is only that first group, only the people in the front row that are like giving us all those accolades and taking care of us in that very direct, intentional way. But we have lots of people who are involved in our welfare who are not in that category, who are doing things that support our welfare. I tend to use a lot of analogies around driving and being on the road. And boy, in the Bay Area, you guys have plenty of opportunities to work with driving and being in traffic jams and all kinds of stuff. But, one of the ways I encourage people to work with that is first of all, to have the thought that the road that you're driving on, they didn't build it just for you. I hate to tell you that. Sorry to burst your bubble, but, they built it so that many people could drive on it, right? They don't build a road for just one person unless you're really rich and you have like a, some mansion up the road or something. And so they have to build a road to your house just for you. They build roads for people to drive on. That means everybody. You should be grateful that all those people are out on the road with you, because there wouldn't be a road if it wasn't for all the people who needed to drive on it. It's a strange way of looking at it maybe, but it helps us to get out of that idea that why are all these people out here when I need to get somewhere? We can have some gratitude for the people who are on the road. We don't know them, but if they weren't in their cars driving, then there'd be no need for the road there. Then we wouldn't have a road there. So we do benefit from others in this world in these ways. So again, this idea of gratitude, having gratitude at that level, goes to so many lengths, because we can talk about the food that we eat, and we can talk about the cars that we drive. As I said, the roads that we drive on, even those roads, again, they didn't come from nowhere. They were built by many, many people involved in that whole process of producing a road. The houses you live in, apartments, condos, whatever you live in, those didn't just land there. They were built by many people involved in designing them and obtaining the resources that were used in them, putting them together, all of these things. So we are in this web of interconnectedness that is important to acknowledge. It's a great source of gratitude. A great way of identifying that connection that we can have with others by acknowledging how we benefit from them in this very indirect way, but nonetheless, we can call it kindness. We can say it's a kindness that we experience. So I don't know they need to say a whole lot more about that. I think that one's pretty obvious if we start taking it to a deeper awareness, so that anything that we have, if we sit down to eat our breakfast, we can think about, the berries that are there in your yogurt or something, and where those berries came from, and all the beings involved in producing that. And we can think about the yogurt or the almond milk or soy milk or whatever it is that all the grains that you eat, all of those various things. And you can just have that conscious moment or two of really extending gratitude for those things in your life, and feeling a connection to all the beings that were involved in that. And it totally transforms the experience of partaking of those things when we have that mind. So I would encourage you, again, that it's a very easy way to, experience some sense of gratitude. Any other suggestions or comments on this idea? Kind of working with those beings who are behind the scenes in the dark of the theater, kind of. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to jump then to these difficult people, the people that keep crashing our show, the people that keep, doing things that we don't really care for, that are really hard for us to feel grateful for. There's a wonderful Lojong saying, the slogans that are in the mind training by Geshe Chikawa, the 7-point mind training. One of them is, be grateful to everyone. So, when we hear that kind of advice, of course, we go, oh my gosh, how do I do that? Especially with, again, those people who are difficult. So I want to share a little bit about what Pema Chodron says about this in her book, Start Where You Are. Many of you have read that book. I think she's an amazing teacher. I don't have any personal relationship with her. I've never had teachings from her directly, but I listen to her teachings frequently and think she's quite amazing in her ability to discern the Dharma and put it in words that we can all relate to. So she says the slogan, be grateful to everyone, is about making peace with the aspects of ourselves that we have rejected. Through doing that, we also make peace with the people we dislike. More to the point, being around people we dislike is often a catalyst for making friends with ourselves. It's kind of interesting how she traces that out. Again, the first idea that, this is about making peace with the aspects of ourselves that we have rejected. It's kind of interesting. Maybe we need to investigate that further in our own minds. She even suggests that, for example, you make a list of the people that you don't like. Mentally you can do that. Or sit down one day and kind of write that up. And see if you can find out, what it is that are the aspects of them that are perhaps a mirror for us to begin to see things in ourselves, the things we haven't made peace with about ourselves. Again, sometimes it may not feel like it's an exact fit, but I would kind of propose that there's something we can learn by that process, that we can begin to acknowledge that when people are pushing our buttons in particular ways, that these are a mirror of the things that we don't like about ourselves, that we haven't perhaps faced up to yet. And at that level, we can be grateful for this person holding a mirror up and saying, hey, look at what's going on inside your own heart and your own mind, to be able to address that. Because karmically, we can say that this is what's going on. This is where the teachings on karma tend to come in almost everything that I open my mouth to speak about. Karma is really one of the most important teachings in Buddhism, because it really is very pervasive. It's not like karma is only operating in one particular way. That's how it tends to be thought of in the West, right? You do something bad and something bad happens to you. You do something good and something good happens to you. It's very linear. It's not quite so dynamic and so pervasive. But really, karma is shaping all of our experience. So when we have a particular person in our lives who's being difficult, they are the mirror of what we have created, that we have now manifesting in terms of them giving that to us receiving that from them. So it is important, whether or not we feel like we've addressed it in this life, to at least listen to that, to be attentive to that, to see if there is something we haven't made peace with. There is some part of ourselves that is being revealed by that person being in our life. So this is kind of the first thing. I like another way that Pema Chodron, I'm paraphrasing her a bit, but she essentially says karma is life giving you the lessons you need to learn. And we hear this in other ways in Buddha's teachings. But this is the most important way to look at those people in our lives initially, is saying, okay, here's something I need to learn from. Here's something that is actually presenting itself in a way that is directly intended at me. It's not like, oh, that's somebody else's person, that they need to deal with them. If they're coming into your life, acting in a particular way, challenging you in a particular way, that's because you've set up that target. You've set up that whole situation. So it's like, oh, good, I've got something to work with here. I've got something I can learn from here. So this was the first thing that she said in this little quote. And it said, through doing that, we also make peace with the people we dislike. Of course, this is an important aspect of it too, because if we meet that person, not out of a sense of gratitude, but actually out of a sense of resistance and pushing them away and trying to do what we can to perhaps even act in a similar way towards them, so that we're meeting their arrow at us with another arrow at them, well, we know that karmically that isn't going to do any good. And it's not going to help the other person, because it's just going to keep them caught up in the same cycle that they, are already somewhat engaged in, and that we have been engaged with them as well. Kind of that circular nature of karma, that we just keep exacerbating our own suffering and the suffering of the other person. As she said, through doing that, we also make peace with the people we dislike. Now, I'm not saying that those people are going to change on a dime. The second that you throw flowers when they're throwing arrows, that they're going to immediately start throwing flowers. That's not the expectation. But we're working on changing the karma, changing what's going on there, changing the relationship that we have with those beings. And that will take time. May not even see the fruition of that in this lifetime, but we can have that confidence that if we keep doing that, we ourselves will change, and over time, hopefully the other person will change. And then she says, more to the point, being around people we dislike is often a catalyst for making friends with ourselves. So this is getting to the point where we can have gratitude, particularly at the level that this person who is manifesting in that way is giving us an opportunity to do the best thing we can for ourselves. Sometimes I teach on this subject called making friends with ourselves, and really talk about the dynamics of that, because I don't think in the West we're very good friends of ourselves. That Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo's talk up in San Francisco, she said something that I've gotten from Kristen Neff as well, who's a great teacher on self-compassion, that we don't, the way that we talk to ourselves, the language we use, the types of ideas we throw at ourselves, we would never say that to our best friend. And yet we give complete permission to ourselves to talk to ourselves in that way. So we don't have a very good track record of being friends with ourselves. So when we actually look at someone who is invading our space, doing all these difficult things to us, and we make the decision at that time to feel some gratitude and some willingness to learn from that, this is how we become better friends to ourselves. This is how we take better care of ourselves, is by acknowledging that if we simply go about, again, creating those same patterns, it's not going to be to our benefit at all. And we're not going to grow and develop either. This is why, again, going back to what Rosemary was saying, we can practice patience with that person. We can have some gratitude at the level of understanding that they're actually giving us an incredible gift. What they are giving us is an opportunity to be the best that we can for ourselves, to ourselves. We can actually learn in ways that we will develop much deeper compassion, loving kindness, and so on the basis of that. We will also strengthen our wisdom. These two main kind of components are sort of head and heart that are always involved in our practice. And both can be deepened through that gratitude in the space of somebody doing something harmful to us. So if we want to really be friends to ourselves, if we really want to take care of ourselves in that deeper spiritual way, I mean, sure, it sounds like I take care of myself when I, punch the person in the face and walk away, because I just shut them up. Well, no, you haven't. I hate to say it, you haven't. You've created more harm to yourself. You've actually been worse for yourself. Again, we shouldn't beat ourselves up when we've done that. Hopefully we haven't done a lot of that, punching people in the face. But we say things, right? And we meet anger with anger and scorn with scorn and whatever. We know we have those patterns. So those are not ways of taking care of ourselves. So gratitude actually has many dimensions to it at the level of somebody who is harming you. Kind of makes peace with the aspects of ourselves that we have been blocked to. It allows us to make the other person somewhat more at peace because we're not engaging them at that level. It allows us to be deeper friends with ourselves, actually create more positive things in our lives that we'll benefit from. And of course others will benefit as well. Any work we do on ourselves definitely, helps others. Any work that we do in improving our qualities makes us more capable of helping others. So any comments about this? We're going to go into this in more detail, but just that idea that was introduced in this quote that I really like from Pema Chodron, and I think it's really an important part of what this slogan, be grateful to everyone, is really about. Because being grateful, again, to the front row and to the people in the dark, even in the theater, is relatively easy. Not that we all have it to the degree that we'd like. We'll still explore that a bit more tonight as well, but it's really hard for the people who are messing with our minds, who are disturbing our show. Anyone, anything you'd like to share? Okay. Yes, David.
I think there's also an aspect that when we're, I'm not sure this gets right into what you were talking about precisely, but when we're irritated, when we're unhappy with people, when we're pissed off, we're not able to take a step back and problem solve, very well, to have that perspective. Because often there are issues, there are problems that need to be solved, and that's what we really want. We really want a good outcome. We really want a good problem solving.
Right.
And I just can't get there as easily when I'm angry or I'm irritated.
Mm-hmm.
So just that's one aspect for me.
Sure.
That I think about sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and what you're pointing out, David, I think it's important that we acknowledge that, those negative states of mind are not productive. We sometimes buy into them thinking that they will, as I said earlier, produce the result that we want, that we'll be able to confront that person, get them out of our lives by meeting them at that level. But the important thing in any of these that I think you're alluding to by making this comment is the fact that when we cultivate positive emotions, we don't allow for negative emotions to be there. Now, again, there's still the strength of the negative emotion that wants to keep rearing its ugly head and, listen to me, you're supposed to be angry, get mad at that person, whatever. But then we have kind of a positive mind that in the space of that positive mind being there, the negative mind can't arise. This is why Buddhism works. I mean, it's why any positive thinking works, is because positive thinking does two things. It increases that positivity and that, the qualities that we're trying to develop, but it acts as a direct countermeasure to the negative things that we're experiencing. So any time that anger or any negative emotion is arising, when we develop a positive emotion, we keep it from arising. Not in a way of suppressing it, because this is not about suppression. This is not about I'm just going to keep shoving my anger down and then eventually it's going to pop up and I'm going to, go postal or whatever. That's an old phrase. Maybe there's a different one now with unfortunately, all the ways that people, I shouldn't talk like that. but what we want to do is something that in the moment says, okay, because I'm holding this positive emotion, I can't have the negative emotion there because they're diametrically opposed. One is looking at the person through the lens of an unrealistic view of that person, thinking that they're painting them all as evil and awful and horrible and making that into the sum total of that being. The other one is seeing them as somebody that we cherish and care about and have, a complete regard for their well-being, which these are, again, diametrically opposed.
And I would add, I think, that what can interact with that positive space and that positive emotion isn't the same thing any longer. What can come into play, what can interact with it is completely different. That starts to sound a little law of attraction-y somehow, but...
Yeah, and I mean, there's some elements of this idea of law of attraction that you can adopt. I mean, I don't agree with it in its entirety. I don't think the Buddha would. I can't speak for the Buddha, but I'm sure that there's some things that the Buddha would have issue with in regard to that. But nonetheless, I think what I heard you also say was the sense that once you shift that dynamic, once you say, okay, I'm going to leave this negative mind of anger and frustration and whatever behind, and I'm going to replace it with gratitude, with a more positive emotion, that you can begin to pay attention even to other aspects of it that you weren't aware of because you're now seeing it through another lens, through a different perspective. And those things can, fundamentally change what you're seeing, in a sense, what you're attracting from that, so that you are bringing in the elements that will reinforce that more positive thinking.
I'm kind of adding the chemistry part
to
what can interact if you're a negatively charged molecule, but you turn yourself into a positively charged molecule, the molecules that interact with you cannot be the same any longer, or the ways that those interactions occur cannot be the same any longer.
And I think that can certainly occur over time. Buddhism would have no problem with that idea. I mean, this is why we do the work on ourselves. We don't do the work on ourselves so that it can become more and more miserable and awful. We do the work on ourselves so that things do, over time, improve. But the expectation, once more, isn't that that's why we're doing it. We're doing it because we know that we have confidence that we ourselves will improve. Situations outside of ourselves may actually get worse at times, but we have the ability through the improvement of our own character to meet those things differently. But over time, I would agree that things do tend to shift in that way. But the idea I was presenting of you're able then to see things differently, I think this is a really important part of it. One of the first things we're going to look at this weekend with the 8 pillars of joy, the first pillar is the pillar of perspective, that how we look at things has a huge difference in how we experience things. So the second that we are able to shift from a mind of acknowledging that person has something to teach us, getting to that place, moving away from the fact that they're messing with our peace and interrupting our show, and moving towards this person being somebody who is very valuable in our lives, very useful to bring us to a deeper awareness of ourselves and to have a greater impact on others through opening our own heart, then we've got an opportunity for a whole shift in that gratitude is really all about. Gratitude, looking at it and saying, this is exactly what I need. Again, it may not be what I want at all. Who wants it? Give it to someone else. No, this is yours. This is your stuff coming in. Venerable Rabino did one teaching once on generosity at our center, and she talked about how, if you're walking down the street and there's a homeless person who asks you for $1, that's your homeless person. Don't think that's someone else's homeless person. It's the same here. If somebody's coming into your life and doing something that upsets your peace, that's your peace upsetter. That's your, disturber. That's the person that is in your life for a reason. So don't think that it's somebody else's to solve. Don't think that, there's some other way to solve it. It's your job to learn from that. Another thing that Pema Chodron says is other people trigger the karma that we haven't worked out. This is another way of looking at this idea, that when that person's coming into it, it's like they are saying, guess what? You haven't quite gotten this yet. Not just that this is a lesson you need to learn, but you haven't worked out this karma. You haven't actually gotten that kind of a deeper investigation into what is all going on. Now, sometimes it's hard to do that. I admit that when we have certain things in our life, it's very hard to pick it all apart and say, okay, what do I need to learn from this? What is the karma I haven't worked out? What are the things that this is actually teaching me? That is a bit of a challenge. I mean, if we look at what's going on collectively in this country right now, I want to preface this with a comment that Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our spiritual director, made at the Light of the Path retreat in 2016. This was in August of 2016, a few months before the election. And someone asked Rinpoche what he thought about Donald Trump. And Rinpoche said, well, America will get the president that America has the karma to get. I mean, in essence, that's what he said. We're kind of like all going there, we're going, yeah, but we know we don't have the karma for that. That was in... Well, we did have the karma for that, so we have the karma. We've created the causes and conditions for a particular thing in our lives. So it's like, okay, so now we have this being in our lives. This is like a real challenge. How do we be grateful for what his time in office is showing us? How do we even know what it is his time in office is showing us? Once more, we have to, again, do some deeper investigation to see what is the karma that we haven't worked out. What are the things that this individual and the things that are going on in his time, that they're really there to help us to learn, to be better at, to improve upon. And I think it's a tough one. I'm not saying there's an easy answer. I'm not saying I have the answer to this. I think this is an investigation that each of us needs to do in the light of what the topic is tonight, to feel some gratitude at all of this, as difficult as it is. And of course, maybe it's still not as difficult as a lot of situations in this world. It's not as difficult as what the people in Syria are going through right now. It's not as difficult as some other events in history that have been very much more challenging. But nonetheless, it is a challenging thing, and also has great bearing on not just the welfare of people in this country, but the welfare of many people in this world, and of course even all the animals and so on in this world. So we see that there is a much more far-reaching impact by virtue of who this individual is and the level of power that he has and so on. But nonetheless, it's the same situation in terms of giving us something to look at, something to feel some gratitude for, that it's ripened in this way and we get to work with it and learn from it, rather than meeting it with the same force that got us in there in the first place. That wonderful slogan, I don't know where this phrase came from. I saw on the internet once it being attributed to Ben Franklin, but I have no idea, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if every time we have somebody that's in our life in whatever way, whether it be the president or whether it be your coworker or your boss or your partner or whatever, and they are challenging you in some way, are you going to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect it to get better, expect it to be different? We have to learn from these things. We have to be able to embrace them with some sense of gratitude, that they are there to teach us exactly what we need to at that moment, that that's our president, that that's our karma ripening. Really tough one. I kind of jumped to that, but I think that that's where a lot of people are in this day and age, is kind of looking at this and going, well, what is this here to teach me? And I'm not saying that that doesn't mean that we don't do things to protest or, make sure that the voice of more humane ways of doing things and so on, that is in any way suppressed. We have to make that voice very loud. But what is the accompanying mind with that? Is it a mind that is, angry and frustrated and so on, or is it a mind that is actually very much in touch with these ideals and then speaking with compassion, not just for the beings who are impacted by actions at that level, but also for the person who is instigating those actions? To have that level of compassion, concern, and gratitude. So again, this is a little bit of a side topic, but I think that this is the exact example where we do find that it's very hard to open our hearts with gratitude for those individuals who are doing things that we are completely opposed to. Doesn't mean that you lose that opposition. It means that you find the right mind state to be with that opposition, which is hard to do, admittedly, but that's the work. And we know it's possible because we see individuals in our world who are doing that, who have done that, who've been able to be in, a state of nonviolent protest and making sure that the voice of reason is heard in the face of those who are going against that. So, am I striking a nerve for anybody in the room? Is this something that's on anybody's mind? Maybe. Anyone want to share anything on that? So, gratitude at that level is pretty difficult, admittedly. But there is something there that is really a valuable lesson for our time. Something that I'm hoping, I think we all have some level of hope. And hope in of itself might not be the best thing, but if it's a hope that is emboldened by all these ideals that we really want to carry forward, that is intent upon acting out of those ideals, then I think we can have that hope that this will actually be a very rich period of learning from what transpired and learning how not to create the karma for this again, how to do our best. And it's not like, once more, that in Buddhist teachings, we're not all about fixing the outside world. That is not our job, right? The Buddhist path is not get it all right out there and then everything will be fine. That's what we've been doing. So when we have even these ideas that I'm proposing tonight, that we look around, well, what is it like to learn from that and to be grateful for that? It doesn't mean so that we can get all of that outside there perfect. It just means that this is what we've created. So this is what we have to learn from. And when we develop ourselves more fully, I think, again, we will have, as David's mentioning, the other things will naturally be more attracted to all of that. They will be ripening on the basis of all of that. They will be occurring because we have actually taken that opportunity to work with these times, been grateful for what we're presented and found a way to, change our minds on that basis. So this idea, again, is something that is important to be able to work with. His Holiness gives the advice that we should see an instruction in everything visible. This was kind of a quote. I'm not sure where I got that quote from. It's in my notes here, but see an instruction in everything visible. That everything that we meet, everything that we see has some instruction for us, which now naturally leads to, again, that sense of gratitude. Let me see if there was anything else on this whole topic about kind of what we mean by this. Any comments up to this point that anybody wanted to share? Got a bit more to say, but yeah, Bob.
The only comment I'd make is I think it's within the realm of my own capacities to try and make the best of the situation, like the current one. Learn from it. Find strengths in yourself to be able to deal with it. Right now it's a step beyond to be grateful for.
Okay. I hear you. No, I think you're saying something similar to what Rosemary's sentiment was, which is it is a little bit of a leap to kind of go from, okay, this is stuff I need to work with. I'll roll up my sleeves. I'm willing to do that work, but am I really grateful, And I guess, again, maybe it just like when we talk about expanding what our meaning of kindness is, so that I was talking about the kindness of the strangers, the people in the dark of the theater they're not being intentionally kind to us, but nonetheless, we're benefiting from what they're doing. Well, when we talk about the kindness of the difficult people, that gets to be really hard to see, right? Because we really have to stretch what we mean by kindness. We have to redefine it in a sense. Because the kindness of those beings, they are not being kind intentionally. They are not being kind directly. They are actually being the opposite. They're being jerks. They're being horrible people. They're doing things that are right in our face. And we have to confront that, and deal with that. So when we see that, this is hard to define it as kindness, just like it's hard to define the feeling that we should have as gratitude when we're faced with that. But it means that we have to have a wider definition of that. because that person is giving us the opportunity to work at such a very deep level, because that's causing us to roll up our sleeves and get in there and do the work. That's the kindness that they're showing us, and that's the gratitude that we need to have for that kindness, is because your friends aren't doing that for you. Well, maybe some friends are. I sometimes talk about, like people's partners. When I taught this one course on the conscious relationships, I actually did an equanimity meditation where you worked with this one person manifesting in 3 different ways, because this is frequently what happens in our relationships that are more intimate. Sometimes they're, maybe most of the time, hopefully, they're like a friend. Very easy to be kind of have an even mind there. Sometimes they're like a stranger. It's like, oh my God, who are you right now? I don't have any idea. And sometimes they're the enemy, right? They're the difficult person. They're the ones that are really pushing our buttons. But I would say in general, most people who are in the category of friend, we're having a much closer, wholesome relationship with, they're not the ones pushing our buttons in that way. They're not the ones really challenging us. Because even with those beings, when they're challenging us, if we're close to them, we tend to give them a little bit more of a pass, right? We know that we've got some opportunity to work with them because we've seen another side of them. We know what it's like when they're loving and kind and sweet and smiling at us. It's these people that are actually the bursting in the theater and disturbing your show that are the really hard ones to work with, because you can't see that side of them. At that time in particular, you don't have any space for thinking of them as being loving, kind, friendly sort of people. All they're manifesting as is in-your-face, awful, mean-spirited people. So it's an incredible gift to have those people in our lives. Their kindness is that they're giving us an opportunity to work at that level. So when we roll up our sleeves, there should be some sense of gratitude, because not every other person, well, none of the other people in the theater are going to give you that type of opportunity. I don't know if that convinces you, but
it would be easier if the only thing these people were doing were irritating me, as opposed to doing horrific things to vulnerable people.
Exactly.
It's the latter part that it's very hard for me to feel any kind of equanimity about.
And this is why His Holiness, in his book Healing Anger, where he says that he doesn't even like the word anger being used in the English language, because in his mind there is what we would call justifiable anger. I mean, this sense of a revulsion at what's going on when others are being harmed, especially those who are vulnerable, who need protection at that time. So, but in Buddhism, we would say that's a positive state of mind. That is the mind that is compassionate, but it includes, sometimes we can separate it and think it's only for those people who are being victimized and taken advantage of by the more powerful. It has to include also the more powerful. It has to include the perpetrators. It has to include the protagonists. If it doesn't, then, the antagonists. If it doesn't, then we are going to be somewhat short-sighted in terms of the compassion that goes along with that. So if we have compassion only for the victims, but we have hatred for the enemies, the perpetrators, well, then we're not doing the full job. It's great to have compassion there, but it's easy to have compassion there. So going back to your statement, I think it is totally fine to have a mind that is reacting to others being victimized and taken advantage of, but we need to include in that formula the people who are perpetrating that. Why? Because karmically, they are also going to suffer from their own actions in the same way that the victims are suffering in this moment. So we have that bigger vision of everyone involved in this interconnected web of karmic action and results, and they just keep playing it out again and again and again. So our compassion, it manifests in what we might call a more wrathful attitude, a more forceful attitude, but it's not together with anger. It's together with compassion for both parties. Is that?
So, I can rationally appreciate that.
But in experience. Thanks, Bob, for being honest. No, I think this is true for all of us. I think it's really true that it's very hard for us to disconnect from these feelings of anger when we see these injustices in the world. We are meant to respond to those injustices in the world. But we have to go back to that question of what type of mind state will be most beneficial in addressing those injustices. Will it be one that simply exacerbates suffering because it buys into similar patterns of hatred and animosity and violence, or will it be one that buys into higher ideals where we can actually rise above all of that and hold a compassion that embraces everyone involved? So it's a challenge, and it's a pretty high bar to meet. But we can get it, like you said. That's great. I mean, it's wonderful. I would say there's many people on this planet that won't even get it intellectually, won't even understand it at the level that we can, much less practice it. So, yeah, Elaine, were you going to share something?
I was just thinking in terms of what we're facing at this time, and I would
Sure.
say everyone in the room has the same sort of angst and distaste for the state of affairs, but we can rejoice in the fact that people are now waking up to that democracy is precious, and we need to now take more control. There's more women arising. There's a lot more happening politically for individuals. So that's a wake up, which we've been asleep for a long time. And I think in some ways it can be a positive. It could be seen as a positive, despite all the horrific things that are happening.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that perspective too. I think that's another side of it that we can see as, again, as long as people continue to engage and pay attention and respond appropriately, then that will be a good byproduct of all of this, is that the awareness of our potential to change things through our vote as well as karmically. I mean, we never divorce the two. I mean, we live in this world. We're embodied in this world. So we got to engage in this world in the ways that we can, which is to get out there and vote and to be vocal in the ways that, many of us are. So I think that this is an important thing to acknowledge, is that there can be those conventional kind of things going on that are really useful. You said a wake-up call. I mean, how many of us felt that, like on the morning after the election, go, wow, that's a real wake-up call, my gosh, Okay, so it means, there's something that can happen. I mean, I'd even go so far as there can be a real shift in consciousness on this planet. I mean, we are living in a time, I'm going a little off track here with this topic of gratitude, but maybe this is something to be grateful for too. When we look at the time that we're living in, we can have that gratitude for the ways in which beings are connected on this planet more than they ever have been, by virtue of the internet, by virtue of what's happened with media in general, that there's an awareness that can be there of what's going on in so many different parts of the world. In the time of the Buddha, they didn't have this, right? How did the Buddha know what was going on in other parts of Asia or Europe or anything? There was no awareness of that, right? But in our day and age, we have an ability to connect with people from a greater distance, to have things, register in our awareness and in their awareness by virtue of the things that we do and the ways that things play out. There can be a whole shift in awareness on this planet by virtue of these tools, provided that, again, we keep going back to why we are here, why we are doing this work. Again, it's not to say that through all of that we're going to once more get all of this perfect and then we've done the job. But it helps to have this, more stable too. It helps because less beings suffer by virtue of that. And that's always our drive, is to diminish suffering in the world. So the gratitude we can have for these events and for the time that we live in and the ability that we have to affect things by virtue of our own individual commitments to these ideals, it's pretty profound. I think we can have a lot of gratitude there. Yeah, David, were you going to share something more? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think this is kind of getting to be an importantly broad discussion, and yet it goes back to interrelatedness. And I know that His Holiness is very concerned about global warming and climate change, and seeing us as one planet. We're just, take a step back into space and look, there are no boundaries of any countries. We are actually we're one planet with one ecosystem and one biosphere and one global heating up planet. And I think that at the same time that points out, speaking of gratitude, the truth of interrelatedness, the truth of cause and effect. The truth of all the stuff that we like to talk about as Buddhists become starkly evident amidst the negatives and the hard stuff and the bad news. But there are so many good things, and His Holiness is also very interested in science, and so we can measure it. We can measure the climate. We have tools now. We have ways to look at it that are very precise and really describe quite precisely in many ways what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good observation, because I think those two in tandem, the fact that we do have this problem we're facing, we do have that awareness, but then we're living at a time where technologically we can do so much more to at least know what's happening, but also to confront it and do different things so that we can make a change in that regard. I think these are important things, once more, to be grateful for, to have a gratitude that it's not like something's happening to us, like it's not the asteroid falling out of the sky like the dinosaurs faced or something, where it's like, oh my God, what do we do? And all of a sudden it's over. We have some ability to react through the knowledge that we've gained, and
Joining the Paris Climate Accords would be nice.
yeah. Stepping back up to the table in that regard would be a nice
Having an
thing.
adult dialogue.
No, and this is where it is a complex world. Admittedly, that interdependence leads to things being pretty difficult to assess and manage completely, because we have so many factors involved. But we have that understanding, at least there's that awareness that we can't sit here in this first world country and keep making the same, behavior and patterns and everything, because we have seen the ramifications of that. And we, as people who have contributed to it to a large degree, need to take that responsibility to make sure we move in that direction. I mean, again, this is a little bit of an aside, but one of the most inspiring books I've read about dealing with climate change, and again, a sense of gratitude, I think, is behind her message. And Joanna Macy, who many of you have heard of, maybe some of you in the room even know her. She and Chris Johnston wrote a book called Active Hope. I was talking about hope earlier. This is how she presents it, is that it's hope that is not just, oh, I hope this all comes to be, and I hope the planet heals itself. I mean, it's active hope because it's an active response to what's going on. And she says it's really the only it's part of a more proactive response that we can have. She says there's essentially 3 ways that we can keep doing things, and maybe this is applicable not just to even climate change, but anything in our life. The first one she calls business as usual, which is essentially the story that many of us have bought into, that we just kind of keep going. You just kind of keep your head down and just hope that it all works out, hope someone takes care of that, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Obviously, that's not a really creative response. The second one is this utter despair and thinking, oh, this is the end of the world now. This is, the end of all life on this planet. It's kind of buying into a doomsday scenario that also isn't really that helpful. That's a story. Hopefully it's not the story that plays out, but that's a story that people can buy into. The third story is this whole idea of a shift in consciousness that can occur. That this is actually an amazing opportunity for us. She even cites, she's Tibetan Buddhist herself, she cites the Shambhala warrior myth about how it's at those times when the world is in utter chaos that the Shambhala warriors are there, the bodhisattvas who will say, okay, this is it. This is what we've been practicing for. This is our time. And have that real gratitude for what this presents. Not that, again, we want that suffering to be there. Absolutely. Every one of us would Tonglen that the world's suffering and take it on and, give everybody a nice, clean, healthy planet. It's not that we are kind of accepting that reality, but we have to start with some opening up to that and saying, this is what we have. This is what we created. This is what I can be grateful for, because it actually has some incredible lessons about how there can be a total transformation of awareness in this world. If we, again, each individually make that commitment to wake up. That's what you were saying as well, Elaine. It's an amazing opportunity. So, again, back to gratitude. I think we can even have gratitude at that level. Again, it doesn't mean that it's the same gratitude that you feel when you get somebody giving you a wonderful gift or something that you really want and that you'll enjoy. This isn't something you're necessarily going to enjoy doing, but it's the work that needs to be done. it's something we have to kind of be willing to look at and say, okay, this is the world that we live in, that we are karmically responsible for. We are now responsible for karmically undoing this, karmically doing something positive out of this. So gratitude can extend to those levels as well. I don't think we, just need to make it those individual ways that we experience it. We can experience it in terms of our world. And I realize for many of you it's still a bit of a stretch. I'm not denying that that's the reality. But it once more has to do with this is the way that things have ripened. So we then have this compelling opportunity for us to undo this, to find out what is the proper response to these things in our world. And that's something we should be extremely grateful for, because without that, we don't develop that ability. I mean, one of the things I wanted to touch on tonight too, while we're talking about this, is kind of the benefits of gratitude. I think we know them somewhat on an individual level, but in terms of what gratitude does for our feeling of interconnectedness, not just the acknowledgement of that, but the sense of interconnectedness that we have with each other, is really an important benefit of gratitude. Because then it's not that I'm sort of, again, some independent thing off on my own. It's that I am acknowledging how others contribute to my welfare, how I need to be contributing to their welfare. It's once more, it's reciprocal. It's not everybody's here in my theater to serve me. It's my job to put on the best show in a sense too. It's my job to do what is the best for everyone in the theater. So it's not all about me in the end, even though it looks like it, because we're all seemingly on our own stage with the audience, out there. It's the fact that there is an interdependent thing going on here, and my connection with others is much greater when I have a sense of gratitude. Then there's no kind of barriers between it. What's it like to sit in gratitude towards some of these individuals or things in our world, and to really pull them into that space of having that grateful heart towards them? Again, we can't get by the fact that there is a connection there. There's a connection between Donald Trump and us. And if we are willing to open up to what this time has to teach us, we can feel that this is not something that we're pushing outside of our lives, as Pema Chodron was saying, something that we're kind of denying in our lives, that we're forcing out, but rather we're welcoming in. Again, it doesn't mean that we go along with it all. It means that we are able to take it in and learn to work with it. And how amazing that we're getting that gift. How amazing that we can have that gratitude for that. So the sense of connection to others becomes much more genuine. It becomes genuine in the world, but it also becomes really genuine with each other. When we have that sense of gratitude, there will be a greater draw to others, and others being drawn to us, and so on. Another way that we can certainly look at the benefits of this is that out of gratitude comes other behaviors that are much more beneficial in the world, right? If we are grateful to others, then we become much more inclined to be generous with them, to be kind to them. If we have no gratitude towards others, then there's no sort of foundation for a lot of these other positive attitudes. Once we have some gratefulness for everyone, that they're all in our theater, that everyone is there for some purpose and is something I can be grateful for, then I have no problem extending kindness, hopefully. It becomes easier to do that at least. And then I can also be much more generous, much more open-hearted towards others. The more personal thing that I think we're already a bit in touch with, we'll go into this a little bit this weekend too when we talk about joy, is the fact that when we are practicing this sense of gratitude, that it really does get rid of our mental unhappiness. It really does induce greater states of joy. I don't know if that requires much explanation. I think we all know that side of it. That's why gratitude is so important in our world, is because it is a feeling of well-being, of contentment, of happiness. Not because, once more, some of these things we are going to find difficult to be grateful for. That joy may take a little bit longer to be sparked in our hearts. But this is one of the byproducts of having more gratitude, is that we do tend to become much more joyful. We can't really be unhappy in the space of that. Another thing that these are some things I just kind of pointed out from various resources, teachings I've had, but the last one in terms of a benefit of gratitude is kind of an interesting one, that our expectations are diminished, that to some degree, if we're grateful, because expectations are a really tricky thing. Maybe I need to talk a little bit more about expectations. It doesn't mean that we don't have goals. It doesn't mean that we don't have some idea of what we'd like to see happen by virtue of our efforts. It just means that our expectations aren't going to get in the way of that. One teaching that I was doing, somebody came, I still haven't looked up this phrase. I don't know, maybe somebody in the room knows where this came from. They said, expectations are premeditated resentments. I kind of like this phrase because, what most of our expectations do lead to some level of resentment when they aren't met, right? If the expectations are met, then maybe it's no problem, right? But this is like a premeditated resentment. We already are like setting up for some sort of disappointment because our expectations were perhaps, again, not taking into account all the various dynamics of all of that. And when things don't happen the way we want them to, we frequently have resentment. If we're able to be in a space of gratitude, our expectations are diminished to a great degree, or certainly they're made at least a lot more realistic, where maybe we even, expect that there will be things that don't quite meet our needs. I wanted to share a little story that Pema Chodron has in Start Where You Are, that's from her teacher, Chogyam Trungpa. Let me find this. I think there it is. And this is her talking. She says, a meditation student I was working with, whom I'll call Dan, had a serious alcohol and drug problem. He was really making great strides, and then he went on a binge. On the day I found out about it, I happened to have an opportunity to see Trungpa Rinpoche. I blurted out to him how upset I was that Dan had gone on a binge. I was so disappointed. Well, Rinpoche got really angry, completely stopped my heart and mind. He said that being upset about Dan's binge was my problem. You should never have expectations for other people. Just be kind to them, he told me. In terms of Dan, I should just help him keep walking forward inch by inch and be kind to him, invite him for dinner, give him little gifts, and do anything to bring some happiness to his life, instead of having these big goals for him. He said that setting goals for others can be aggressive, really wanting a success story for ourselves. When we do this to others, we are asking them to live up to our ideals. Instead, we should just be kind. So this is in her context of talking about this slogan of be grateful to everyone, that there's times when our expectations actually are the worst for the situation because they, once more, are setting up for some level of resentment, some level of us being disappointed in others. We know this to some degree with the cases where we do have a lot of that patience and are willing to be with others in their learning. This is where we see these qualities. This is actually one of the qualities that we look for in a good spiritual guide, is somebody who will be patient for us however long it takes for these ideas to sink through our thick skulls and actually down into our heart, So we have to have that with others as well, is that the expectation is that people aren't going to get it immediately, that they're not going to do exactly what we want, but rather we're just going to continue to be kind, continue to be with them in whatever way, and have that kind of deeper gratitude that just understands that it's all part of the path, It's not like we can, think, we're going all these disappointments we have, that's showing kind of something negative. It's still part of our path. It's still something that inevitably we're going to experience ourselves as well as others. So I like that story. I think it really does point out how expectations can become very problematic. So this was, again, in the context of some of the benefits of gratitude, that it helps us feel more connected. It's sort of a doorway for us to have other positive emotions of generosity, kindness, and so on. It overcomes our mental unhappiness, keeps us in a more joyful state. And then finally, that it has a tendency to diminish our expectations, to make us much more realistic in how we are in the world, because we have that deeper sense of gratitude that's there with whatever we meet. People not doing what we told them to do for the zillionth time, versus people immediately doing it. So I don't know if there's other benefits that people have heard or experienced, but yeah, David.
No, I was just going to bring up the comment, the experience, that this is one of the challenges of being a parent and having children is that a lot of times, we when they're younger, we're working with helping them set goals and working with some expectations, but as they get older, these become less and less useful and more and more challenging. And so I'm hearing you. I'm working. It's just something that I'm, but I think it's a challenge for every parent.
Yeah.
Personally, I do believe that. And anyway, you've brought up something that I think has kindly struck a nerve.
Good. You're grateful for that, Dan. It's working already.
No, really, I am. I think it's a great thing to be thinking about. Yeah.
Good. And I would say it's not just people who have children, people who have pets even, like myself, that are continually tested in terms of our expectations about how they're going to behave and what they're going to do. But no, I think that this is an important thing to learn, is that there may be times again where it's good to have some level of goals and things that we want to help others to, actualize in their lives. But the expectations are usually quite personally invested. They're coming from our side. This is our stuff, as was pointed out in Trungpa Rinpoche's comment to Pema Chodron. That's your problem. Their problem is one thing, what they're doing, and that's theirs to deal with. Your problem is expecting that they're going to do something different. It's very unrealistic for us to do that. Again, we can still have the hopes and the efforts that help others to make changes in their life, continue to be kind to them, attentive to them. No problem there. Just have that gratitude underlying this, that is willing to be with others in the space of whatever they're going through. So does anyone have any other ideas of things that you've experienced in terms of your own gratitude? There's a wonderful teacher in the, he's just down the way near Big Sur. I assume he's still there. I don't know. Brother David Stundle-Rust. You've met him.
I know of him and I've read some of his teachings. I found out that he was in Big Sur about a year after he left.
Oh, he's left there.
No, in a monastery in Austria or Germany.
Really? Oh, okay. Yeah, he's written a couple of books on gratitude. I think Gratefulness is what he refers to. And he's even some wonderful videos of him talking about gratefulness. I'm going to share with you the technique that he devised for working with gratitude. I may repeat this weekend simply because I really like this practice. And if you want to, you can find it out on a number of websites. But all you have to do is do a research or a Google this technique that's called stop, look, go. Stop, look, go. So this mindful gratitude practice that Brother David has, maybe I'll tell my little story about Brother David. I only met him once. When I was living in San Francisco, as many of you know, I was in San Francisco from 1979 till 1998. The beginning of 98 is when I went over to Italy to study at our center over there. And there was, actually this was right after my first partner passed away in 1992. That's how I met Buddhism, was through the death of my partner. And I started studying Buddhism. But before I got to Buddhism, I decided that what I needed to do for self-healing was that I needed to go down to Esalen in Big Sur and spend a week doing they had like this nature exploration thing. My partner and I would like to do a lot of backpacking and all of that. And so it was really nice to go down there and do a sort of guided spiritual way of being in nature, which is essentially what it was for 5 days. And I can't remember the name of the man who was leading that course down there. But one of the meals, Brother David came over from the monastery and he was there at the table. And this guy who was leading the course asked Brother David, he said, "Brother David, would you share a poem with the group?" Because he knows Brother David, I guess, has a lot of different poems memorized. And he didn't know me at all. I mean, I just kind of met him. I didn't know my story or anything, what was going on for me personally. And he shared this poem by W.S. Merwin that's called Separation. And it's only like 2 lines. And it's, your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I see is stitched with your color. And it was, it was just like, I just like was practically in tears at the table because I was still grieving and mourning and in that period, of really very fresh emotions. And he's an amazing guy. I don't know. Anyway, that was my own little personal story I like sharing because I don't know, it felt really I was in the presence of somebody who's really pretty special. So Brother David has this technique that I mentioned, stop, look, and go. And the stop part of it, he says this, or this isn't him actually talking, this is another person commenting on his practice, says, this alone is a quite valuable practice. We live in a culture that is all productivity, rush, and noise. Can we take a moment and be still? What benefits might we experience if we do? In Brother David's words, we need to create stop signs in our lives that create a pause and be still. So this is kind of the first step, is that, we got to get off that treadmill of just always doing something, always on the move, always looking to the next thing, and always in that future-oriented mind. This is, in a sense, what we would call that more mindful component of, is that we have to stop and be present with the moment, with what's going on in the moment. The second one, look, is described as, be curious about your own experience in this moment. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? For what can you experience a sense of gratitude? And this is kind of the question that we are with in this mindful gratitude practice, is once we stop, then look and be with what's going on. Be with that news report that you're hearing, or be with that person who's, saying things that you may not want to hear, or be with that person who's saying things that you do want to hear, whatever it is that is going on. Take that moment to look and see what is actually occurring. Be open to that. He says you don't need to manufacture anything, and if something quite difficult is happening, there's no reason to try and change it. Perhaps you just remember that you are alive, that you are breathing, that there is no moment exactly like this moment. This is something Brother David emphasizes, is the uniqueness of each moment, and having a gratitude for that, moment by moment, every moment a different moment, never the same. Just being able to be with whatever is going on. The third step is kind of the interesting one. This is the more active part of it, again, is that it's not just, okay, I'm going to sit there in the space of this gratitude or for whatever going on in the moment. It calls for action. And of course, it's going to look different times, but this step of go, he says, what seed of action is this moment offering you? Living is an art that you create as you go. How can you make it beautiful for yourself or for others? Ask yourself these questions and wait patiently for an answer. When you get one, do it. Act on the insight that comes from your own intuition and reflection. So this is saying, again, don't let it just be something that lands on you and then there's nothing else, no other ripples in the pond, in a sense. It means that you have to see what that calls or is calling you to do in response to that, for yourself as well as for others. Take that moment of gratitude that you become aware of and let it kind of work through you. Let it become a vehicle for you to be open to expressing that gratitude, perhaps, or doing other things that will help others to know gratitude or to be receiving your gratitude. There's so many different things we can do. Again, the go part of it might take some time for us to kind of come to a conclusion about, but that's, allowing us to make it about connection, about not just being in our own little experience of gratitude. So I've tried this practice, and I think it's really quite powerful. The important one is the first one, to remember to stop. Otherwise we go through our whole day, and it's like, okay, have I been grateful for anything today, really? We might think that we express gratitude quite freely because we do say thank you a lot. We do acknowledge other people a lot. But to what extent have we really gotten in touch with that spirit of gratitude? To what extent have we really sat with ourselves and opened our minds to what we can be grateful for? So, has anyone in the room heard of this practice or tried this practice? No? And you can find information out on the internet on this. Stop, look, go. Maybe we do it now. So, let's just stop. Let's stop in the midst of all this teaching, me going blah, 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 you having to listen to me go blah, blah, blah. And just be with yourself in this moment. Take a moment to be still. And now do the next step of look. Be curious again about this moment in time that's unlike any other, unlike any that have preceded it, unlike any that will follow from it. What do you see or hear, feel? And is there something in your field of experience for which you can develop a sense of gratitude? And then the third step of go, and we'll spend a little more time reflecting on this. What seed for action is this moment offering you? How can you make what you're feeling grateful in this moment into something beautiful for yourself or for others? And just wait patiently for an answer to that question. And when you get one, see how you might act on that insight. Okay. So did anyone have anything from that they'd like to share? So I'd say again, the most important of these is that first one. And this might even be where we need prompts to stop. And so, of course, in the Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, they have those mindfulness bells that go off every hour or something that give the cue to, okay, stop and be present and be mindful at this time, so that we see, what the quality of our minds is and pay attention to what we're doing at the moment. I think it was actually in, talking earlier about the law of attraction, it was in The Secret. I think it was in that film where the one gentleman was carrying around a gratitude stone or something. Does anyone remember? I saw that years ago, so I can't remember all the details. But the idea that he had was that, every time that he would reach into his pocket and feel this stone, he would be prompted to remember gratitude. So again, be creative. Find what works for you. Some of us may need prompts to remind ourselves to have that gratitude, because once more, we're not just talking about the thank yous and the being more verbal about all this. We're talking about being in touch with this heart quality of gratitude that's really coming from a place of acknowledging, all that we have, all that we've been given, all the amazing opportunities and experiences that are around us. So sometimes that works, or to have something that's hanging from your neck that you occasionally grab, a little pendant or something, and you go, oh, my time to remember gratitude. Just an idea. I mean, you might have to create your own stop sign in your own way. So Frank Ostaseski, who many of you have heard of as well, a teacher in the Zen tradition who was very involved in the Zen or hospice, the creation of that and developing that. He says, gratefulness in practice is a recognition of what we already have. And I think this is an important part of it, is to say that at some level, we are receiving an awful lot in every moment. We have so much that is in our lives, whether it be something we want, something we don't want, what have you, that we really do have much in our lives that we can be grateful for. Nice and easy to be grateful for all the wonderful, delightful things, but nonetheless we can extend some gratitude over time through practice to even those things that are really difficult for us, because those are also very, very rich opportunities. So I think I'm going to end it there. I don't know that I have 10 more minutes of things to say about gratitude. I don't know. I mean, I think I've pretty much said it all. But any other comments from any of you? I mean, there's wisdom. Again, I'm not the only holder of wisdom here. That's why I like to make these talks much more interactive, because you all have the same wisdom. You really do. I don't doubt that at all. So maybe you have more wisdom even. But anyone want to share anything? Your own experience around gratitude, or anything that you'd like to impart?
Well, I'll share something, but it's got nothing to do with gratitude. It's just something that you said earlier on about the interconnectedness that reminded me of something I heard on the radio today. I was listening to Terry Gross, Fresh Air, and she was talking to this author who wrote a book about Donald Trump's children. And so Donald Trump wanted, so this is somehow the idea of the interconnectedness, you know.
Sure.
It made me think of that. He wanted 5 children because he thought that, you know, each one of them will have some quality that would be, you know, reminiscent of him, but not all of them are going to have all his qualities.
This is quite interesting.
So he had 5 children, and each one has embodied one of those qualities. So when you put them all together, it's like him. So he gets this reflection back of him, but that's all he sees is himself in these 5 children.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. So it struck me about.
It's a different mirror. He's got his own take on this.
Different take on the interconnected. Yeah. So I just thought that was wow.
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight. Thanks for sharing that, Casey.
You should listen to Terry Gross, and then just, I mean, I'm not saying it correctly, but that's all he took away from it. That these 5 kids were just a manifestation of one of him and one. You know, they 5 people to make one of him.
I want to know what the 5 qualities are. And which child embodies which quality. Yeah, Rosemary, you had your hand. Thanks, Casey.
I would like to say I'm grateful to you, because what you said about looking at gratitude, maybe sort of shaping the definition of gratitude, was useful to me, because in the prayers I do in the morning, and I think may all beings be free from enmity and danger. And the first person who comes to my mind is always Donald Trump, because at first I was thinking, okay, so he's made so many people miserable. But then I thought, and this has been going on for a little while, that, you know, if I truly want him to be free of ill will, I have to stop thinking ill of him. Yeah. So that was kind of I mean, I hadn't thought of it in terms of gratitude before, but it helped me kind of that mirror looking back. And then I also tonight just thought, you know, when you have such a fragile ego and so many people hate you, how horrible that must be.
Sure.
So I was actually able to feel a little bit of gratitude tonight. So
Wonderful.
thank you for that.
Oh, Rosemary. You did all the heavy lifting, though. It's not me, but you're very welcome. No, I want to share a little quote. I think I've got this on one of my slides for the weekend as well, from Khalil Gibran, writer of The Prophet. He says, "I have learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet strange, I am ungrateful to these teachers." So it's another way of phrasing it, that when we are faced with things that really do, like you were expressing of, seeing him having to experience all this, but your ill will towards him really just not being part of the solution of the problem, that really the gratitude is much more effective to kind of acknowledge that we can learn from these individuals about ourselves, about what we are creating in our lives and so on. We can also even learn just how we don't want to be in the world. I mean, I'm not saying they should continue to do what they do so we can all learn that lesson. It'd be nice if they were to change and to have that transformation. But nonetheless, they are showing us stuff that we do need to work on in ourselves, diminish our own ill will. And how amazing, how grateful we should be for those teachers. They say that in the Lojong text, right? That these are our most powerful teachers, the people who are kind of pushing our buttons the worst. So in that spirit, we need to have that gratitude, just as we have gratitude for any teacher, anybody who's giving us any knowledge that we can use in our lives. Yeah, Elaine?
I would just share a story. Sorry I'm standing, but I'm having a cramp in my leg that will not go away.
No worries. Thanks.
Lama Zopa Rinpoche was at my house once doing retreat, and Venerable Roger had the day off, so I was the attendant. And we were having lunch, and he said to me, "I can't practice." And I said, "Oh, yeah, here comes the teaching." And he said, "Everybody is so kind to me. I always get the best food, and I'm offered the nicest places to stay. Everybody says the nicest things." He says, "Now, your enemy, they're your very best friend, because they show you where you still need to learn."
Yeah.
So it is true, they do open the door. We don't want to look at that, but this is true. They show us where we still have work to do.
That's a beautiful teaching from Rinpoche. Thanks for sharing that too, your own experience of that. That's amazing. Well, when you do think about these beings who are at that level, of course, we may have different views of who they are and where they're at in their spiritual path, but they frequently do say that, bodhisattvas and people who are practicing this way, because they're not creating the karma to attract that sort of thing, for that to ripen in their lives, that the rare person is the person who's like that. It's usually everything quite smooth and everything going their way, in a sense. You can become quite complacent, so you need that person that's going to push your buttons and do the things that annoy you. And so gratitude, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you all for what you've shared. Any other sharings for tonight before we conclude? No, really, I'm so grateful, seriously, for what people share. It makes it so much richer as a learning experience for myself, and I hope for you too, to be able to explore this topic together and to apply it in our own lives. So let's just have a few thoughts of what we call dedication. I think most of you know this practice. At the beginning, we had our motivation, our intention, thinking that we were here to explore this topic of gratitude with the aim that we could eventually embrace a gratitude for every moment, for every experience, for every being, seeing that this is all part of what we have created. It's all something to teach us. We can learn from every single thing we experience. So now we dedicate that we may be able to use these teachings in our lives, every one of us, to increase our capacity for gratitude, for others, for our situation, and so on, so that we can connect more genuinely with others. We can be a greater source of well-being for them. We can help them to know this deep gratitude and help them to eventually accomplish the greatest well-being through all of our efforts, through everything we've done here tonight. And just hold that thought. And then finally, we dedicate for the good health and long lives of our spiritual guides. And as I frequently point out, I mean, there are spiritual guides in every spiritual tradition, even ones that aren't in traditions, beings who are dedicated to helping others to know truth, to live from truth, to practice wisdom, compassion, kindness. So we make strong prayers for the long lives and good health of all of these amazing guides, particularly His Holiness the Dalai Lama, our spiritual director, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all the other teachers that we and others have karmic connections with. May we and others never be parted from perfect teachers, and may we never, fail to learn the lessons from them and from anyone we meet out of this spirit of gratitude. Okay, thank you all for being here. This was really wonderful. You have my deep gratitude, really, seriously. Okay. I didn't get a chance to share one of my favorite stories on gratitude from this wonderful book, but I'll do that this weekend. I don't know if anyone's read this, The Choice by Dr. Edith Eva Eger. She's a Auschwitz survivor, and her story is just incredible. And you'll hear a bit of that, more of that this weekend. So anyway, all right, thank you.